I was working on the soundtrack with T-Bone. Director for the movie was in studio one day when we were tracking, and he thought it would be really cool to actually cast me as one of the musicians in the movie. So I got to spend 2 weeks filming a few scenes in this movie.
I am super excited to get to have a chat with a musician that I've been following for quite a while and just cannot believe how much talent that one person can possess. He is a multi-instrumentalist, plays, to me, every instrument under the sun, is a great singer, just an amazing talent, and it's such a pleasure to have Mr. Rory Hoffman on the podcast. Hey, Rory, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate you taking some time to chat with me today. I've really been looking forward to this.
Well, thanks for having me on, Brad.
How are things in Nashville today?
Things are good. It's actually my birthday today, so
what?
Kelly and I, my girlfriend, and another couple who we know are going to go and enjoy J. Alexander's tonight and get us a nice big old steak to celebrate being 46 years on this planet today, as of the day of this recording. So,
well, first of all, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday. And
thank you.
I am 1 year older than you, and I hope you're having a wonderful birthday. And J. Alexander's is one of my favorite restaurants anywhere. So
okay, so I like you more already because you have good taste. So
yeah, man, their steaks they're out of sight. They're really good.
And the what do they call it? Not your ordinary mac and cheese.
Yes, that's right, man.
Yeah.
That place is great. Yeah, they had one near where I lived in Atlanta, and we'd go there from time to time. Yeah, it's really good. What are you doing these days? Are you playing gigs around town? Have you been touring with anyone? What's been going on?
For the last few months, I've actually been off the road a bit, which is fine with me because last year, especially the latter half of 23, I was on the road so much that it was, Kelly enjoys having me home a little bit more, and I enjoy being home a little bit more. So these days, I'm just kind of working around town, playing. I play Robert's Western World quite a bit. I play Rudy's Jazz Room. I play this spot in a hotel called Gannon's, Nashville, just a really easygoing jazz gig. I get a fair amount of studio work. I'm set up to record, do projects from my home studio for people. And so there's plenty of work to keep me going here locally. So
I think the first time I heard you play, I was playing in a band and we opened a show for Ricky Skaggs. And I believe this was when he was kind of doing like, his show was like a half Kentucky Thunder, half full band thing with electric instruments.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking, who in the world is that playing all those Gary Smith piano parts over there? And I was just knocked out with your playing.
Yeah, that was a fun opportunity. I mean, whenever you get a chance to play with one of the big stars of decades gone by, like people I grew up listening to on the radio, it's like I'm now playing the songs that I grew up listening to, and that's a fun experience to have.
Sure. And, you and I are basically the same age, so I'm sure your situation's like mine in that when we were kids, I mean, Ricky Skaggs was, he was one of the biggies back in the
exactly.
early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
And do that band. And I think maybe Scott Mulvihill was playing bass with you guys at the time.
He would have been playing. Yep.
Yeah, it was a great band. I just remember how great it was, and I actually I stood backstage where Ricky's offstage amp was, and just listened to him playing all that Bender stuff all day. It was fantastic. But and then the second time I heard you, some friends of mine and I went to Eddie's Attic in Atlanta when you were touring with John Cowan, and that band was just that band knocked me out too. And I didn't make the connection until years later that the guy with Ricky Skaggs was the guy with John Cowan, and I just couldn't believe it. I didn't realize that you were the same person.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So was that Skaggs was with Ricky? Was that your first tour with a major artist, or did you tour with someone before that?
No, I call myself the utility musician for the Christmas tours, because I did a couple Christmas tours with Kathy Mattea, and then I did another Christmas tour with Kacey Musgraves. And Kacey was after Cowan, or I forget the timeline now. It was, but before Skaggs or something like that. But anyway, I'd played on Kacey's Christmas record, and I'd played accordion and bass clarinet and baritone sax and some piano and some guitar, and so it just made sense for her to bring me on tour, because who else was she going to get that was going to play that strange combination of instruments? And
Yeah.
And the same with when I was working with Kathy Mattea. It seems like on their Christmas stuff, they just want a few more color sounds that they don't necessarily want during their regular shows. So I get called in when they need the weird stuff, like for Kathy, I was playing mostly piano, but then I would play some flute, and I'd play some percussion, and I'd play some tenor recorder to create this kind of Celtic type vibe, and different stuff like that. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure, and I'm sure by the simple economics of it too, to have one person that can cover that wide spectrum of instrumentation is got to be great for them, because it opens up this whole new sonic thing because it's tough to recreate what is produced on a record, and to be able to take one person out and go and do that live that's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, it's handy for on stage, but it's also really handy for in studio when people are producing. They can making a record. They need some unique sounds. They call me, and I can create a whole lot of textures, and they don't have to wrangle schedules for 10 different guys or gals, right, or whatever. And since I already knew, and the workflow can go faster too. Since I already know what I played on the track before, it's easy for me to play around on the overdub or harmonize certain lines, because I know what I just did. Whereas if it was a different person on every instrument, then there's not quite as much symmetry where okay, I remember doing this particular line at this bar on the verse. I can harmonize that or play around it. Whereas, it works out. It's beneficial for all involved, I guess.
I knew you had toured with Kathy Mattea. I didn't realize it was a Christmas tour, and then didn't realize that you had also done that with Kacey Musgraves. That's pretty cool, man, to go and get the call to do the session and then get the call to go do the tour. That's pretty cool. In doing some research, I realized that I saw some great video of you playing in your family band, and that you grew up in South Dakota. Is that right?
Yep, I claim both of the Dakotas because my hometown was called Lemon, South Dakota, population 1,200 people. But our ranch property was actually just across the state line into North Dakota. And so I had a North Dakota phone number and a South Dakota mailing address growing up. So I claim them both.
That's great. And you started playing quite early, right? You were quite young when you started playing.
I was the official drummer in the family band by the time I was 5 years old. And I have the old vinyl LPs to prove it, because we made records and stuff as a family band. And so when I was 4, my first time in the recording studio with the family, I was 4, and I was singing. And then by the next year, I was playing drums. But I was teaching myself a lot of instruments all at that same time. I was teaching myself guitar and piano and harmonica and all that, which is one of the reasons why I hold guitar the way I do, hold it on my lap and play overhanded. And that's because I was too little to wrap my hand around the neck. I couldn't hold the guitar because I was 3 years old, and so I figured out my own way of doing it. And a lot of people, because I'm a blind person and because I play the guitar on my lap, automatically think Jeff Healey. Oh, are you the guy from Roadhouse? Or do you know about Jeff Healey? And I was like, yes, I do, but I'm not Jeff. And I didn't even know that Jeff played that way. Like Jeff wasn't my childhood hero, and I wanted to play exactly like him. I just happened to find that the most efficient way to play. And so that's the story on that.
Well, and look, no disrespect to the memory of the great Jeff Healey, but you are such a deep guitar player with such a vocabulary of chords and harmonic knowledge, and then just the solos that you play. I am just amazed at the physical thing that you have managed to do playing the instrument the way you do. When you started growing up and getting older, did you ever consider changing your technique on guitar, or did you just decide this is working, I'm going to keep it that way?
I was far enough along doing it my way that I didn't want to start over, and I was actually encouraged to start over, not by my family. My family, there's kind of a funny story. I was interested in learning 5-string banjo, and there was a guy who said, I'll give you a banjo, but you're going to need to learn to play it the right way around, because there's no way to play 5-string 3-finger style banjo the way that you're playing your other stringed instruments and stuff. So if you promise to work hard at learning how to play the banjo, but you're going to have to hold it the right way, I'll give you a banjo. So I decided I'd go buy a banjo.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't want his banjo. I didn't want to be constrained to, these are the rules. If I'm going to give you a banjo, you have to do it this way. So I decided I'd go buy a banjo and learn it myself and do it my way. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, sorry, man, I'm going to do it on my terms. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. When you were, and I just to zero in on the guitar, when I listen to you play, I hear Django, I hear Tony Rice, but I hear Thumbs Carlisle, I hear a lot of different players, kind of maybe some influences that you maybe have kind of crept into your style. Who are some of the players, and this entire chicken picking thing too that you do really well too? Who are some of the players you were listening to or picking up some things from? As
a kid, and when I was coming up, I didn't even really know the names of the guitar players because I couldn't read liner notes on albums, and there wasn't really scanning technology in those old days where I could scan a thing and have my computer read it to me, and there wasn't really internet where you could look stuff up. So I didn't necessarily even know who the session players were, on a thing. So I was just learning stuff from, Buck Owens records, and I was listening to Grady Martin play, and I was listening to Hank Garland play, long before I knew those names. And then I was listening to, Charlie Christian play, and I was listening to, and then I heard I'm Married to a Waitress and I Don't Even Know Her Name by Alan Jackson, and I heard that ripping solo, and I didn't know the name Brent Mason at that time, but I just knew whoever it was that played that guitar solo was tearing it up and playing some really unique stuff, and I wanted to figure out how to do that. So, I was drawing influences from all kinds of places, but at the time, I wouldn't have even known the names of the players. I just know, I really like how the guitar solo was on this Alan Jackson song, or I really like the solo that happened on this Benny Goodman tune. I'd know the title artist, but I wouldn't necessarily know who the side musicians were all the time.
And I think one of the things that has struck me the most about your playing is, and this is on every instrument, be piano or saxophone, clarinet, anything, or accordion, is that there's obviously the technical piece that goes along with it, but you have such a stylistic approach to each instrument, and whatever style it is that you're playing, it's appropriate for the instrument that you're playing. And I, to have a deep technical knowledge is one thing, but the deep musical knowledge that you have to possess at the same time is just quite incredible to me.
Well, and that's, that's the thing, because there are people out there who will claim to be multi-instrumentalists and can play a lot of instruments, and they can actually play one or two instruments, and there's a whole bunch of other instruments that they can kind of, play well enough to not completely sound terrible. But I want to claim if I claim to be able to play an instrument, I actually want to be able to play it at a really high level that people are actually gonna want to hire me to play that instrument, not just like and so I want to sound good on all of the instruments that I play, and I was fortunate to be blessed with the talent to be able to do that, but also spending a whole lot of time working on it to get good at all the instruments. But I don't want to claim to play an instrument that I'm not actually going to sound good on.
We live in this YouTube world that we live in now. I think that there's a lot of I don't want to say that a lot of younger players or musicians feel like maybe there's some shortcuts to learning how to play an instrument, when the reality of it is just what you said. It just takes a lot of time and dedication on the instrument, putting in the shed time to get better at it. There's no shortcut to getting better other than just practicing.
That's true, but I mean, the only thing I would very gently push back on is that there is such a thing as just like innate talent. Like
absolutely.
Like not everybody, like the whole adage that you can be anything you want to be. Like I mean, maybe because what you want to be is what you end up excelling at, but like some people are just born more athletic and some people are just born more music. Like I found out that I had perfect pitch before I even knew there was such a thing as perfect pitch. So it's not like I was really trying at 3 years old to develop perfect pitch and I really want to get this down and learn these notes. Like I just found out that I had perfect pitch when I was 3 years old, So there's like, some people just have to work a lot harder to get results than in a particular field, but that's a good thing, I mean, like I wasn't born to be an athlete, or I wasn't born to be a professional grade chef or whatever. I was my talent happened to be in music.
Yeah. And what are your feelings about having perfect pitch? One of my best friends has perfect pitch, and he kind of has a love-hate relationship with it. What are your thoughts about it?
I like it. I love it. It allows me to learn stuff so much faster, and it learns me to pick out like inner voices. Like if I hear like a really complex like jazz chord or sequence, it's easy for me because I don't necessarily have to use the approach of, okay, what interval am I hearing in relation to what the root note is? Okay, so that was a C, and so this other note must be then the sharp 11. Like it's just like I can just hear all the individual notes, and so it's easy for me to hear things and figure out what's going on without having to do all the math in my brain, because I can just automatically, oh, okay, that's C, E, B flat, D, F sharp. This is okay. That's what that is. Okay.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I had a feeling that was going to be a big reason why you would like it. You spoke earlier a little bit about the family band that you played in, and you playing drums. Were your parents playing? I think you have some siblings as well. Were they all was everyone playing in that group?
My mom did not play. She was the road manager and the social person who could sell all the merch and, talk to everybody and make sure we were all wearing clean clothes. And the organizer, she didn't really have musical talent, but she made everything run. And my dad was a guitar player, and my sisters were keyboard players. And then when my younger brother got old enough, he actually took over playing drums, and that's when I moved on to playing a lot of other instruments. And there was a time when my uncle was involved for a while, and so yeah, there were a lot of musicians in the family, and a lot of like hobbyist musicians too. Like my grandpa and my great uncle could, blow harmonica and play guitar, but they never really did it professionally at all. But so there were musicians on both sides of the family, both more pro and more like just hobbyist. But there was always music around.
Yeah, I was in the same situation. I was fortunate to have musicians on both sides of my family and grew up, playing. Every time we all got together, we played music, and playing piano or guitars, or everyone's lots of singers. And yeah, it's a thing of my life that I am so thankful that I got to experience that with my family, of getting to do that. And I'm sure it was the same for you. Were you touring? Was it a regional thing? Where were you playing?
We were playing, the Dakotas and surrounding states, because we also had the cattle ranch, and we also had to go to school and all that kind of stuff. And so Dad would run the cattle ranch, and we would go to school and whatnot. And then on weekends or during summertime or whenever Dad didn't have, because it was range cattle, it was beef cattle, it wasn't dairy cattle. So range cattle can kind of fend for themselves for a few days while you go out on the road and stuff. Like dairy cows have to be milked out every day and stuff. So we were doing, beef cows. And so that afforded us a little bit more opportunity to go out. And so we would play North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wyoming, the states bordering. And generally we wouldn't go too far afield from that. On an occasion, something would come up. We did a little thing in Texas one time, and different stuff would come up occasionally, but mostly it was the Dakotas and surrounding states.
Yeah, no, that's great. Did you mentioned school? Did you do any sort of an organized, did you do band or anything in school, or were you just playing music? Okay, that's cool. What were you playing then?
That's when I took up woodwinds. That's when I took up saxophone, was when I hit 5th grade band, and because I was just interested in all things music. And so I wanted to be part of the school band and whatnot. So that's when I started playing saxophone, and then later on started playing clarinet, flute, and other stuff like that. But so that was had to be part of the school band. And then like in high school, I played piano and guitar in the jazz bands and stuff like that. Because again, I was just interested in all things music.
I'm sure your band director was like feeling like they had hit the lottery, having one person that was capable of playing all these instruments. Like, what?
Yeah, it was. Those were fun times.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. So, what facilitated the move to Nashville? When did that happen? And was it just kind of a natural progression that you thought, well, this is where I'm wanting to go with my career? How did that all happen?
I moved almost 16 years ago to the day. I moved in April of 2008. That happened because after high school, I have to kind of backtrack a little bit to explain, but after high school, I did go to college for 2 years. I do not have a degree. I ended up quitting after 2 years because some things happened that allowed me to go pro. In a manner of speaking, I entered there was the thing called the Christian Artist Seminar in the Rockies in Estes Park, Colorado. And it was like a multi-day convention / conference / workshops and competition. And so I entered in the piano competition, and then I entered in the instrumental competition, and I was in a band at the time that I joined when I was in college, and we entered the band competition, and I ended up taking second place in piano and grand champion instrumentalist on guitar, and the band I was in ended up taking a trophy, and so because of all that, I met somebody who wanted to help me produce my first record, my first solo record, and so I came to Nashville in 2000 to record that record. It was a gospel record at the time called Blind Faith. It was a bunch of old instrumental hymns done as I was mostly playing guitar and some piano, and then a bunch of Nashville session guys. So I kind of make it analogous to like the gospel version of the Brent Mason Hot Wired record.
Okay,
because it was really, really good arrangements and, all that kind of stuff. And anyway, so then I met another guy up in South Dakota who really didn't have any musical talent to speak of, but he did have money. He was the financer, and I was the talent, and we started a production company up there called Depot Music Productions, because our first facility that we bought to build the studio was a old train depot. So we were Depot Music Productions, and we built a recording studio, and then later on we created a TV show that aired for a while on the TCT Christian Network, and produced some records up there, and both for myself and for other people. And that was the very early dawning days of collaboration over the internet. So there was no Dropbox or anything like that, but we were just directly using FTP servers and stuff to swap files back and forth. And anyhow, that lasted for about 8 years. And then for myriad reasons, which I really don't need to go into, that company ended up dissolving. And so then I was trying to figure out what my next move was. And that's when Nashville just kind of became apparent, because I'd been traveling to Nashville for different events and stuff over the years. And my first time was when I made that record. And then I got involved in some organizations that were here in Nashville, and so I would end up in Nashville a few times a year. And so when Depot Music disbanded, then I was trying to figure out what my next landing point would be, and Nashville just seemed to make sense. So that's why I ended up finally moving here in '08.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I was wondering about that, kind of the path that led to that. And and when you first got there, when you got to Nashville, were you just freelancing, doing pickup gigs with people, or what? How did you get your name out there for everyone to find out about you?
Yeah, I literally just started showing up. The first thing I did was called all the people that I thought I knew in this town, and from all my trips to Nashville, and because people would be like, if you ever decide to come to Nashville, make sure to let us know about it, and blah blah blah. And I think I got one job from somebody that I knew here in town. It was basically start over and make my own way. So I would literally I would get on the internet and I would find stuff that I was interested in, because I was like, I'm here in country music town, but I like playing country music. I love playing country music, but I'm also interested in other things, and I want to see just how broad the scope of music is here in Nashville. And so I would literally just type into Google gypsy jazz in Nashville, and I came across this website of a band called the Gypsy Hombres. And so I hit the contact, button on that website. Again, this was before any of the social media stuff really had taken off. And I just said, hi, I'm new to town. Where do you guys play? And do you ever host any sit-in jams where new people can play and whatnot? And this guy, Peter Herka, who runs the Gypsy Hombres, answered and says, I'm the founder of the Gypsy Hombres, and we play every Thursday night at the 12 South Tap Room, and I don't really host any actual jams or nothing, but if you feel like you got the balls, that's literally what he said. If you feel like you got the balls, bring a guitar with you some Thursday night. And so the first time I went there, I just went to listen and hang out and meet them and stuff. And then the next weekend, I actually brought a guitar with me, and I sat in on a few tunes, and the next thing you know, I became the full-time guitar player in the Gypsy Hombres for the next 8 years.
I'm sure they were like, holy moly, what has happened? Listen to this guy that's sitting in with us.
Yeah, and so, that's, and then that same, I would just keep doing that. I found out about this group called John England and the Western Swingers, who play at Roberts on Mondays. And so I just went down there on a Monday and I first of all went to their website again and sent them an email and said, and usually I would try to do that just because as a blind person, it's a little bit harder for me to just walk into a place and go up to the people on stage and introduce myself, and so I'm like, I'm going to come see you guys on Monday night. So if you see a blind guy walk in with a cane whenever you're on your set break, just come over and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you and whatever. And I ended up sitting in with John England and the Western Swingers, and he started calling me for gigs once in a while. And it was just that was how you did it. I mean, you just kind of showed up and introduced yourself, and when you were asked to play, you did your homework, you made sure you showed up, and you did a good job, and then people would call you. And so from that, I started working with a guy named Paul Kramer. He had a group called Swing Street, and then one of the sub bass players for the Gypsy Hombres was a guy named David Spiker, and he was working with Kathy Mattea. So he introduced me to the idea of working with Kathy Mattea. And then I was playing at the Legion Post 82 one night, and there was a guy in there named Kyle Ryan, who was the guitar player for Kacey Musgraves, and he heard me playing all these instruments, and he thought I'd be a great fit for the Kacey Musgraves, Chris. So it's just showing up, doing a good job, and other people will find out about it. And it's just building that network.
Like I was telling you before we started recording, I lived there, it feels like 100 years ago when I was there. But, I just remember that. It really is just building the network, showing up, being prepared. I think that's the biggest, and being easy to work with, right? Not showing up with an ego, not being difficult on the bandstand. And people, if you are someone that's a good hang, that plays well and shows up knowing what they're supposed to do, your phone will probably ring.
Exactly.
That's the way it works.
That is the way it works. And, I didn't know how much hardship I'd run into being a person with a disability. Would people be hesitant to hire me because, how much extra help is he going to need? And is this going to just be a big pain in the ass for us and whatnot? So I always try to make things, easy and I'm confident in my disability and I've learned how to adapt. I before I met my girlfriend, I lived alone here in my own house for 12 years. And so I'm independent and I can, and so it's like, and I can play a lot of instruments. And so that's another big help. So you can hire me and I can bring 4 different things to the gig and whatever. So, if somebody has to help guide me to the stage or help me find an outlet to plug in my amp, that's not a whole lot for what they're getting by hiring me. So, we ended up figuring it, we figured it all out. And, I could tell with some people there was a little more, some people were just great and they were fine with it from the very beginning. And then some people were a little bit more just unsure and didn't quite know and whatever. But, that's just human nature. That's how it is. It's just one of the things you learn to adapt to.
How would you say, and you've lived in Nashville now for a while, and I've been quite removed, but I've been back a few times and certainly get to experience the freaking traffic there now when I drive through it on my way to Atlanta. How is Nashville different from when you moved there, or how is it the same? I guess a 2-part question.
Well, it's both. It's still a very much of a you have to get to know people and show up and do good in order to get referred and in order to get the work and get called and stuff like that. You can put a whole bunch of videos and stuff on your Instagram or whatever, and that might help, but still you still gotta show up and play good and be pleasant to be around and different, but like when I moved to town, you could get places a lot easier just because there wasn't quite as much wild expansion. I got here right before, I'm sure it was still expanding from the people who had been here since the 80s or 90s or whatever, but it hadn't gotten ridiculous yet. And so, it was, in some ways it was easier to get around when I first got here, but in some ways it was a little more difficult as well because we didn't have Uber and Lyft yet. And so I didn't have an app on my phone where if I needed to get somewhere, I could literally just get a ride. You had to, call the cab company or whatever and then be put on hold and then wait and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like some things were easier and some things were harder. But still, to this day, the hardest part of my career is transportation, getting where I need to be when I need to get there. Some people are kind of like, wow, you're so lucky. You don't have a car and you don't have to keep up with car maintenance and all that expense. And I'm like, yeah, but I still need to get to where I need to get. And I am 100% at the whim of other people to get where I need to be when I need to be there. And that creates some problems because I use this service sometimes called Access Ride, which is for people with disabilities. It's through Natural Metro. And they are notoriously not on time. And so you have to build in a whole lot of extra time so that if they're not on time, you can still get to where you need to be in time. Or if they completely mess you up altogether and they come knocking on your door at 5 a.m. to take you somewhere when you actually wanted it to be at 5 p.m.
Oh my gosh.
and or just any number of things, and so or you get a driver, and this could happen with Uber or Lyft or anything, not just access rides. You get a driver who can't really speak English, and so all they do is just follow the GPS, but I need to tell them I need to be dropped off at a certain exit, or when you get here you need to not follow your GPS and instead do what I tell you to do, and they can barely understand what you want them to do, and then I can't see where we are, so then they get lost, and then I don't know where we are to help them get unlost. And transportation is still the hardest part of my career, but it's second to none.
Yeah, well, and then you also have all of your gear on top of that, right?
Right. I also have all of my gear, and so then my driver has to help me carry in gear, because like if I have 3 instruments and an amp and whatever, I don't have, and if I don't have an extra hand to like use my cane or to hold on to them if they're going to guide me, and so I have to have a hand free to either use my cane or to hold on to somebody's elbow who can guide me. So that's one less hand that I can use to carry stuff. So I have a big ass accordion on my back as a backpack, and a big amp in my left hand that I'm carrying, and something else slung over my other arm, and then have my hand free to hold my cane or hold on to their elbow. And I still have 2 other pieces that need to get brought into the place. And that is the painful part of my career.
Yeah, well, you probably have to feel freaking exhausted by the time the downbeat even happens.
Sometimes, I mean, it's just one of the things that you get used to. I mean, other people have the same issue, just in a different context. They have to park in the parking garage 4 blocks away and schlep all their gear to the club and stuff, because you can't, or bring all your stuff, try to find a loading zone where you can quickly run your stuff into the place without getting ticketed, and then go park your car and then walk 4 blocks back to where the gig is. So, I mean, it's a pain in the ass for everybody, but I think it's a little bit even more of a pain in the ass for me, just because I can't do it independently, and I'm completely at the mercy of whoever my driver is. Are they going to show up on time? Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to be friendly? Are they going to be competent? That's a pain.
Yeah. Well, man, I tell you that I just applaud your dedication to that, because I'm just sitting here just thinking of myself in your position, and I can't even comprehend being in that position. But at the same time, I don't think I would have the patience that you do to deal with that. So I certainly applaud you for being able to just even deal with that and not lose your mind, because I think I probably would.
It's just part of it.
Which instruments do you tend to get hired most for these days?
I get a surprisingly large amount of work as an accordion player.
Really? Okay.
And it's because there's not, how many really great guitar players are there in Nashville?
There's a few.
Right. How many really great accordion players do you think there are in Nashville?
Probably not many.
Substantially fewer. Right? And so when people want that, I'm one of, 3 guys to call instead of one of 3,000.
Right. Yeah.
And I use, not exclusively, but oftentimes I use one of the Roland digital accordions, so that I can pull up B3 sounds or piano sounds or string orchestras or banjo or whatever. And it's a really big attention getter on stage, because all of a sudden, where the hell is that banjo coming from? Oh, it's coming from the accordion player. As if accordion isn't bad enough, now he's making banjo sounds on it. Or where's that killer B3 coming from? Oh, that's the accordion as well. Crazy. And so a lot of people really like to hire me to do that. But I still get quite a lot of jobs as a guitar player, because the interesting way I play guitar is also a attention getter from a visual perspective as well as an audio perspective. Like the hotel gig that I do, I mostly play piano and clarinet. It's like a old school jazz gig, so I get to still play a lot of piano and woodwinds and stuff like that's what I love, is that I'm not really pigeonholed into, this is the that player. You know, I like have different people who call me for different reasons, and that's what's fun, and that also keeps my chops up on all the different instruments too, because I'm literally using them all the time.
Well, and I think that there are some multi-instrumentalist utility players out there, and you were certainly not one of these that I'm about to describe, but there's a little bit of a novelty to what some utility players do. And you are like I said earlier, you're such a deep player on every instrument that you pick up. And I could see why anyone would want to hire you, just because you are going to make that ensemble sound better when you're on stage, because you just have such a wide vocabulary on any instrument that you play.
Yeah, well, and again, that's, I kind of alluded to that earlier. If I'm gonna play it, I want to play it well enough to actually, I like when people hire me, I mean, especially for recording sessions, because, people might just hire me on stage for the gimmick of it, because it doesn't really matter if it sounds great really or not. It's all about the spectacle of the guy playing 10 instruments or whatever. But I mean, you want it to sound good too, but like literally for a recording studio, you want it to sound as good as it can sound. And so if somebody hires me to play harmonica on a session, it's because they think I'm actually going to make it sound good, not just because I'm a utility guy who can kind of blow a harmonica, or they hire me to play saxophone on a track because they really like my sound and my approach to playing saxophone, not just because, oh, well, he's the guy who can also play guitar and accordion, so we might as well just have him do some saxophone too. Like in a recording session, you're really there to get the best sound you can. So when I get called to play a lot of different instruments for recording, it's because I'm actually going to sound good on those, and it's not like just a gimmicky, oh, he can do that too.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that's it. And I can tell this about you. I had a suspicion about it, but talking to you about it is that, if you're attaching your name to it, you want it to be excellent. And that's,
exactly. Yep.
Man, that's an amazing way to live, and I think your career is a testament to that you want to show up, you want it to be the best you can be, and you want to elevate whatever project it is you're playing on. So I applaud you for that. There's a video circulating, it has been for a little while, I don't know where you were playing downtown, but you were playing a guitar solo where you were singing along with the solo, and then you were singing the harmony parts on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be the infamous Route 66 from Legends Corner a few months ago.
Man, oh man. Look, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, but every musician I think I know has been passing that around to each other like, can you believe this guy? Well, and the rhythm section backing you up, man, everybody just sounds so good.
Oh, that band is ridiculously good. CJ Wilder fronts the band, but when I take over, I'm usually playing keys or accordion in that band because he's playing lead guitar and fronting the band. But then when he goes out to do the tip jug pass and talk to the folks and stuff, I move over to guitar, and that's when we do a few songs where I'm kind of fronting the band, playing guitar, and it's Dink Cook on bass, who spent many, many years playing with Toby Keith. It is Jim Riley on drums, who spent many, many years playing with Rascal Flatts. We have Aaron Till playing fiddle, who played with all kinds of big artists in the day. And so, yeah, it's a ridiculously good band. I mean, it's like a ridiculously good band for playing a downtown Broadway bar gig, but we maybe do it once a month or something. So it's not like we're trying to get 12 shifts a week down there or nothing. We just do it because it's a lot of fun, and yeah, it's great.
What does a typical week look like for you? Do you work like 5 or 6 nights a week doing live shows, sessions? What is your schedule normally like these days?
There's not really a normal. I mean, I can tell you, like, sometimes I'll have 4 days or something where I won't have any gigs, but there's always studio work I can be working on. I have, I'm actually working on a 30s era big band. He's writing original music, but he wants it to sound like 30s era big band, and I'm doing all the horn arrangements and working it up on MIDI first before sending it to people to play the actual parts. And but anyway, if there's no gigs, there's still work I can do here, studio work. But I will play Gannon's at the hotel 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes I'll play Robert's Western World 2 to 3 times a week, and then just an occasional Rudy's Jazz Room gig, an occasional Station Inn thing, an occasional Legends Corner thing, an occasional D's Country Cocktail Lounge. But yeah, 5, 6 live gigs in a week, and sometimes I'm doubling up. Like I'll play Roberts, especially on weekends like Fridays and Saturdays. I'll play Roberts 2:30 to 6 p.m. and then go over to Gannon's and play 7:30 to 11 p.m. So you can rack up 4 gigs in 2 days if you do that on Friday and Saturday. And so those tend to be the busiest days when you're working the doubles, and then you'll have a few days where you don't have any gigs and you can just work here from home or whatever. So, or session work where they call me into a studio, whatever it is.
So you're set up at your place you doing remote tracks for people that will send you tunes from around the country or around the world
all the time.
That's awesome. Well, I'll certainly put your website, on the show page so folks can reach out, because I know a lot of musicians want to have someone that can add anything that you play on it, to make their tune better. So I encourage everyone to check Rory's stuff out.
Well, I also have, just to mention, I also have a lot of world and ethnic instruments, and that occasionally gets used. I mean, people, sometimes they don't even know what they want. They'll just be like, hey, I know that you have this crazy collection of instruments. Can you think of some kind of ear candy that would be unexpected on this track that would really fit? And all of a sudden I get a chance to put a Middle Eastern kanun on there, or a Chinese guzheng, or a Russian berdola, or a hurdy-gurdy, or just whatever. I mean, I have a very large collection of world and ethnic instruments, stringed instruments, woodwind instruments, percussions, that I have so much fun with, because I'm very interested in music from other cultures and how they think of music and how they perceive music and what kinds of instruments they play their music on. And I can't be, nor would I necessarily even want to sound like I play all these in their completely authentic styles, but I can play them well enough to kind of create that cool sound on a track where you just want, let me just throw something really interesting on this track, and all of a sudden I'm pulling out some kind of Middle Eastern harp of some kind, or something like that. That's so much fun to do when I get asked to do overdubs like that for people.
Oh man, that is so cool. Yeah. Have you done any film work yet? Have you done anything for scores or anything like that at this point?
I have. I did not under my own name, but working for. I've worked for T-Bone Burnett on 2 different movies, and actually one of the movies I ended up being cast in as a musician actor in the movie, starring Matthew McConaughey.
What?
Yep. So there's, I was working on the soundtrack with T-Bone for this movie called The Rivals of Amaziah King. And the movie's probably going to be coming out sometime this year. I don't know exactly when, but it's called The Rivals of Amaziah King. And I was working on the soundtrack with T-Bone. And of course, movie soundtracks are the perfect opportunity to play a lot of strange, unusual instruments and whatnot. So the director for the movie was in studio one day when we were tracking, and he saw me, in the studio working, and he thought it would be really cool to actually cast me in the movie as one of the musicians in the movie. So I got to spend 2 weeks filming a few scenes in this movie.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Did they film it in Nashville?
No, we were in Birmingham.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I will be sure to check that out. And I'm hopefully there'll be a release date of that soon, and everyone can go check you out. That's so cool. I can't imagine what the experience is like working with T-Bone. Just the output that he has had over the years as a producer is just unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Rory, this has been an absolute pleasure. You are just a wealth of knowledge and just an amazing talent, and I am just so grateful that you gave me some time to chat with you. I encourage everyone to go out and listen to to Rory's music. I think all of your solo albums are available on all the major streaming sites.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
you can ask Alexa, you can ask Spotify, or if you're still one of the people who actually buys music, you can buy CDs off my website, roryhoffman.com. It's kind of a placeholder website. I don't really keep it up anymore because, not a whole lot of people even go to artist websites anymore to buy physical product. It's all streamed these days. But I still have hard copies of CDs, and if you buy some, it makes more room in my storage room. So there is that ability. Otherwise, you can easily find me on the streaming platforms of the world and on YouTube and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to help Rory clear out some space in his storage by buying up all of his products. And
it's that way I can buy another instrument to put there instead of a box of CDs.
That's right. So he can get another cool instrument and be in Matthew McConaughey's next movie. That would be awesome.
I have, let's see, two custom builds underway right now from instrument makers who are designing a couple instruments for me, and so yeah, there's always projects in the works.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, Rory, best of luck to you. Just keep on being an inspiration to folks. Your music is just unbelievable, and we just thank you for all you're putting out there for us.
Right on, Brad. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for listening to the Bandwidth Tapes. I'm your host, Brad Williams. The show's theme is called Placation and was written by Mark Mundy. Drop me a line at the email address, thebandwidchtapes@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to receive new episodes of the podcast. And while you're at it, please tell someone else about the show. Thanks for listening.